Here, we're going to talk about what leadership means in that bigger context. And really having Brad here is such a great opportunity to be able to do that. And I want to lead off the conversation by playing a video. And this was something really extraordinary that NASCAR did. They got together several of their drivers and said, hey, do you have something to say right now about this moment, about the racial injustice that is motivating the chants and the demonstrations we see in the streets of America? And those drivers said yes. And so they put together this video that was posted to Twitter. And let's all take a look at this together.
We're no strangers to moving fast.
And we know how life can have that same quality.
But now
is the time to slow down
and reflect.
The events of recent weeks
highlighted the work we still need to do as a nation to condemn racial inequality and racism.
The deaths of George Floyd,
Breonna Taylor,
Ahmaud Arbery, and countless others in the Black community are heartbreaking.
are heartbreaking and can no longer be ignored.
The process begins with us listening
and learning, because understanding the problem
is the first step in fixing it.
We are committed
to listening with empathy
and with an open heart to better educate ourselves.
We will use this education to advocate
for change in our nation, our communities,
and most importantly, in our own homes.
even after the headlines go away.
All of our voices, they make a difference.
No matter how big or how small.
It is all of our responsibility
to no longer be silent.
To no longer be silent.
We just can't stay silent.
We have a long road ahead of us.
But let's commit to make that journey together.
Together.
Our differences should not divide us.
It is our love for all mankind
that will unite us
as we work together
to make real change.
As we work together to make real change.
So I happened upon that video in my own Twitter stream and found it to be really, really moving. And we are so lucky to have Brad here, but for several different reasons. Not just because he is a champion on the racetrack. He is a full-time driver for the #2 team, Penske Ford. And he is also, though, and this is something many of you might not know, he is also a businessman. And he is the founder and CEO at Keselowski Advanced Manufacturing. And so we're going to talk to him. Today's all about scale, right? So we're going to talk to him about leadership, about building a team for the future, about making sure those employees have the skills they need to meet the demands of the future, what that hiring looks like. And so, Brad, before I bring you into the conversation, let's take a look at the other side of your life at Keselowski Advanced Manufacturing. Let's play this video.
From day one, when we founded CAM, we knew we didn't want to be just another additive metal manufacturing company. We wanted to have so much more to us. From engineering to subtractive capabilities and full QC that no one else had the capabilities to do.
Well, it's impressive what Brad has built since the launch. The number of systems, the equipment, the technology. We knew simulation upfront had to drive the digital thread for Industry 4.0. You have to have top-notch, world-class talent to come drive this.
So this is a man of many skills. This is a man of many talents. And he's applied his leadership both to the racetrack and to his own life, to his employees, as a leader in the business world. And we are so lucky to have you here on this day in this conversation. Brad Keselowski, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate everybody who's tuned in and watching. Of course, we miss seeing you in person, but we're so glad we have technologies like video conferencing to be able to catch up with you and to have this talk today. So thank you for your time. Thanks to the entire JFF team.
So before we start, let's pretend that we're actually in person. And I'm just going to tell you my favorite COVID greeting is the elbow You should have, so give me one of those. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you. Until we meet again in person someday. So I want to start off with the Twitter video because it's pretty moving. It's pretty extraordinary for athletes, for people, high profile people in sports to get together, not just someone's random tweet, but people getting together and saying, this is a moment we need to collectively recognize. What was behind that for you? Why was that important for you to participate in?
Sure. Well, I think first off, I'll start with how it kind of came together. A handful of drivers got together and said, hey, this is going on. And of course, as we're competing and we're racing right now, I have a race tomorrow. Rachel had a race last weekend and the Wednesday before that. So, we're so focused on competing that sometimes we lose perspective of what's going on in the world, right? Because, my team owner in motorsports, Roger Penske, he's all about go out there and win, do what it takes to go win. And sometimes what happens when you're in an environment like that is you get really blinded to what's going on in the world. And so thankfully there's some drivers that are cognizant of what's going on in the world and raised their hand and said, look, I know we're racing this week and twice a week and everybody's got a lot going on, but this is kind of a big deal. We should make sure that we're cognizant and that we're acknowledging the global movement that's going on right now. And key thing I say is it's global. It's not just here in the United States. And so it came together that the drivers in NASCAR at the highest level, at least, have all kinds of group chats using all kinds of technologies, whether it's, your text or group me or whatever it might be. And I would say probably a couple hundred messages went through of, hey, what should we do? How do we do it? Everybody wanted to do something, but how do we do it and say it the right way? And let everybody know that, hey, we don't have the answers, but we're willing to listen. And all these different drivers and sports entities came together. And this past week, as we were racing in Atlanta, Georgia, we were able to produce, the video that you saw here just a few minutes ago, and to go with it, petition NASCAR to create a moment of silence before the race started, which actually involved taking the race cars out on the racetrack, driving them around for a lap, shutting all the engines off, and just, reflecting and recognizing the world landscape. So I thought that was really special. It came together pretty quickly. There was a dialogue that, was maybe a week or two long, but the actual come together to make it happen took 3 or 4 days, which if you know anything about the sports landscape and getting all these different people together, that's really hard to do. We seem to not always get along and agree on everything, but this was one thing we could get along and agree on.
I wonder what is happening in the world right now, and an awareness of larger issues about racial inequities. How does that come into play in your company? I mean, when you're making decisions about hiring, I mean, how are you looking at what's happening right now in these debates and applying it to your business?
Well, I think, to your point at the beginning here, I have 2 different entities. There's the racing entity I have, which, I drive and compete at the highest levels of NASCAR. And then I have my business ownership, and I have a couple different business units. The advanced manufacturing unit is probably the most prolific. And so I wear different hats. And when I put on my business owner hat and think about, whether it's racial inequities or diversity in general, what comes to mind is that, I look at some of the best businesses in the world. And what are the traits of the best businesses in the world is they have a diverse customer base. Whether you're looking at Apple or pick your company, Microsoft, they don't just sell here in America. They sell across the world. They sell to all different people across the globe of different diversities and so forth, and genders and so forth. And I look at that and say, well, that's what any business owner would want to be. But if you're going to be successful with a diverse customer base, you probably better have a diverse workforce, because your workforce controls your products, controls your sales, and you want them to have a robust understanding of course, their customers. So I think it's inherently critical for the success of any company that looks to be, broad with their perspective and to diversify their customer base, to have a diverse workforce. So I think point number one, it's important even beyond everything that's going on in the world with respect to being respectful. It's important for your business to be successful. And I think that's probably the key area that I look at it first and foremost. And there's a number of ways that, we look to achieve that. Of course, we still want to have and make sure that we have the most qualified candidates. But I really look at our business, and I'm a big subscriber of, owning your own 10 square feet. And what that principle means to me is, as a business owner, and even more than a business owner, whether it be my personal life or professional, it's how do I own my own 10 square feet? I know I can't affect everything in the world, but I can affect the people I'm around, whether it's employees, management teams, my family, my friends, and I can hold them accountable. I can't hold the whole world accountable. No one can. But if we can all hold our own 10 square feet accountable, our own actions and the people closest to us, I think we can move different initiatives forward. And this is certainly an important one to get right.
I wonder if I could ask you about hiring. You just said there, obviously you want the most talented, most skilled, most qualified people in your organization.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean to you? What metrics do you look at to make sure that that's what you're getting? Is it always where that person went to school, or their pedigree, or are there other more non-traditional mechanisms that you have identified as a way to make sure someone is of good integrity, good character, along with the skill sets?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think integrity is number one, because without integrity, you eventually, no matter how talented somebody is, you eventually lose your corporate culture. And, one thing that's clear to me, being a part of sports teams, so you can have all these individually talented players on a team, and if they don't all pull the rope the same way together, it's not going to be a very good team. And, I think probably a lot of people watching here today can make an analogy to their own favorite sports team that might have had that issue at one point in time. And so you look for integrity because you want to create a common thread within your company to where everyone's pulling the rope the same way. And if you can't agree on the most basic value of integrity, your chances of long-term success are very, very low. So I think you have to start there. And I had this discussion with someone the other day about how culture eats everything else for breakfast in a business. And so am I going to tell you that we always get that right? Absolutely not. There's always going to be candidates that, we interview and then you get inside and you say, oh, that was not the person I thought it was going to be. And that's part of it. And you have to understand that you're not going to be 100% successful with hiring. And do we like that? No, we want to be 100% successful, but that it happens. And when for me, starting a new business, our success rate is probably somewhere around 60, 70%, 3 out of 5 roughly. And you have to kind of shrug your shoulders and say, all right, there is no perfect way to test. I know one of the things that I really value the most when it comes to integrity is mentoring. So we have key values inside of our company that we award. And one of the most key values that we give to our employees through different awards, whether it be bonuses or recognition programs, is for mentoring. It's for taking their knowledge and making sure that they spread it to others within the company, because we also know we can't be successful if we have a very select amount of stakeholders or employees in our company that hold the critical knowledge, because eventually, their time will come and go. I always like to joke with our team that I need to prepare as if you won the lottery tomorrow. What would happen? If you won the lottery tomorrow and you took all the knowledge you had inside this company and just left and went on that great Bahamas vacation with a really big yacht, what would happen to this company? And if it's bad, like really bad, as in we'd lose key knowledge that we spent years learning, then we don't have the right systems in place. So that's why we value mentoring so highly. And we look for that as a key trait in hiring. It's part of the integrity process. Of course, I love any kind of accreditation you can get for someone's skills. I think that's great. We don't get necessarily caught up in it. Some of our best employees only have, your typical high school diploma, but they have mentoring qualities and they have high integrity in other areas that they more than makes up for it, and we can teach. And I think that's so, so important. So I think those are probably the core attributes we look for.
Do you, Brad, urge your hiring managers to look out for that, to think more broadly, to widen their aperture, if you will, when interviewing candidates?
Absolutely. And, again, I'm not going to tell you we get it perfect. There's a lot of different ways we measure it. In fact, our team here likes to joke with me. I had a drill where I was hiring some people a few years ago. And one of the things I did is I went to IKEA. And there's this whole IKEA drill. I don't know if you've ever heard of this before, but if anyone here is married and ever tried to build anything from IKEA, you know how tough that can be on your relationship, right? It's quite the struggle. So what we did is we went to IKEA and bought 3 of the hardest to build chairs possible. And as part of the hiring process, we brought candidates in and said, all right, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to interview and we're going to build this chair together. And that will be one of the drills to see, how can we work together? Let's talk to each other. And are you going to get frustrated? Because building this chair, pretty frustrating. And so some of the drills I was a part of, and I actually helped build the chairs with some of the interview candidates. And we did it. It was really actually kind of fun because you could have this active and robust dialogue, and everybody kind of let their guard down when you were doing it because, there was an actual actionable item. You weren't quite as nervous. And I had a few fun with some of the candidates and, intentionally messed up a few of the installs on some parts just to see, were they paying attention? How would they react? Would they get frustrated or would they correct me? And how would they correct me? Would they correct me with, what are you doing? That's terrible. Or would they correct me with a teaching moment that could improve me as though I was someone on the floor today? And so those are some of the fun stories we have, looking for integrity through mentorship.
Thank you for that. We don't have a ton of time left, but I want to get to how you see corporate social responsibility, because you did something exceptional yourself in the middle of this pandemic. You looked around at your manufacturing capabilities and said, we could do something here. And you shifted and you started producing PPE, personal protective equipment, in the form of face masks. Was that a complicated decision to make, and was it a complicated process to enact?
Yeah, well, I'd say first off, we're glad to play a role. When it comes to COVID-19 and all the challenges, we're nowhere near out of the woods. Hopefully we will soon be out of the woods, but there's still a lot of challenges. But one of the initial challenges was, of course, personal protective equipment shortages that affected all kinds of different critical landscapes. So for us, one of our core technologies here at Keselowski Advanced Manufacturing is 3D printing. In fact, you could say it is our core technology. Most of our capabilities are in metals, but we do have some capabilities in plastics. So we used our metal capabilities to build molds. So those molds actually have several advantages of 3D printing that allow them to operate more efficiently. Mm-hmm. So we built some molds for a handful of companies, which is a great initiative that we're really proud of. And then we actually built the personal protective equipment, face shields, as many people might know, with our plastic capabilities until the technologies became available to scale in other manufacturing methodology. So we built about 500 units for personal protective equipment that made its way to all kinds of different workers, healthcare workers, fire department, mortuary affairs, and a few others. And, I actually, just before I got on this call here today, got an email from one of the departments they got at a hospital, and, just sharing their gratitude of how much safer and better off they felt. And we're so glad to play that role. No one can do it all, but we can all do something. And I really believe no matter what the crisis is, if we embrace that attitude, we can affect change.
Which is really what it's all about. It's what you started talking about earlier. You can get overwhelmed with the world, but if you take ownership and responsibility for your 10 square feet, and in this case, your 10 square feet included manufacturing and being able to produce PPE, that's where change can come from. Brad Keselowski, thank you so much. Championship NASCAR driver, business owner, dad, we should say, to two beautiful girls. I did my cyber stalking. We so appreciate your time, Brad. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, thanks for having me on. I wish everyone all the best and appreciate your support. And as we look out at the world today, certainly lots of challenges to face and overcome. But I do tremendously respect men and women that are watching it today and trying to improve themselves through forums like this. I think they serve a terrific cause and need for our workforce and beyond. So it's a pleasure to be a part.
All right, back to you, JFF. Thanks again.